The language of self-forgiveness. Lisa came to me with a confession that broke my heart. I talked to myself worse than I would ever talk to my worst enemy, she whispered. If a friend told me she had to put her dog down because of cancer, I'd hold her hand and tell her she was brave. But when it comes to my own decision about Max, I call myself a murderer. Lisa had been carrying this crushing self-judgment for 8 months. Every morning, she woke up to a voice in her head that said, "You failed him. You gave up. You're selfish. You're weak." Our internal dialogue shapes how we heal. But here's what Lisa didn't realize. The way we talk to ourselves shapes how we heal. Our internal dialogue can either be a bridge to peace or a wall that keeps us trapped in guilt forever. Today, I'm going to teach you how to speak to yourself with the same compassion you'd offer your dearest friend, because you deserve that kindness, especially now. What we'll learn today: explore why we're harsh with ourselves. We'll examine the reasons behind our self-criticism during grief. Scripts for self-compassion. I'll provide specific language to replace your inner critic with your inner friend. Letter to my brave heart. By the end of today, you'll write your own powerful tool for ongoing self-forgiveness. Why we become our own worst critic. Let me start with a question. If your best friend came to you and said, "I had to put my dog down yesterday, and I feel like I killed him," what would you say to them? "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. You loved him so much. You did what was best for him. You were brave and loving." But when it comes to your own situation, you might say, "I'm a failure. I gave up too easily. I'm selfish. I should have tried harder." Why do we do this to ourselves? 3 reasons we become our own worst critic. We think self-punishment will prevent future mistakes. Your brain believes that if it beats you up enough, you'll never make a wrong decision again. But here's the truth. Self-cruelty doesn't create wisdom. It creates paralysis. We believe suffering proves love. Part of you might think, if I'm not in pain, it means I didn't love them enough. As if torturing yourself is somehow honoring their memory. But your pet didn't love you so you could suffer. They loved you so you could be happy. We're trying to control the uncontrollable. Guilt gives us the illusion of control. It whispers, if you can figure out what you did wrong, you can make sure this never happens again. But pet loss isn't about right and wrong decisions. It's about love in the face of impossible circumstances. The harsh voice in your head isn't protecting you. It's keeping you stuck. And here's what that voice doesn't understand. You can love your pet deeply and forgive yourself for being human. These aren't opposites. They're actually the same thing. Identifying your inner critic versus inner friend. I want you to imagine 2 people living in your mind. Let's call them your inner critic and your inner friend. Your inner critic sounds like this. You should have known better. You're selfish for wanting the pain to end. A good pet parent would have tried everything. You gave up too easily. This is all your fault. Your inner friend sounds like this. You did the best you could with what you knew at the time. You made a loving decision in an impossible situation. You sought guidance and wisdom before choosing. You put their needs before your own comfort. You were brave when they needed you to be. The language of your inner voices. Notice the difference? The inner critic speaks in absolutes. Always, never, should have, would have. The inner friend speaks in context. Given the circumstances, at that time, with the information you had. The inner critic focuses on blame. The inner friend focuses on love and courage. Now here's a powerful question. Which voice have you been listening to? And more importantly, which voice would you want your pet to hear you using about yourself? I'm guessing your dog or cat or beloved companion never looked at you with criticism. They looked at you with pure love. They saw your heart, not your mistakes. What if you could learn to see yourself through their eyes? The friend test technique. Here's a simple but powerful technique I call the friend test. Every time you catch yourself being harsh, ask this question. Would I say this to a friend in the same situation? If the answer is no, then you've identified inner critic language. Now you get to practice translating it into inner friend language. Examples of the friend test in action. Inner critic. I'm a terrible pet parent. I let him down. Friend test. Would I tell a friend she's terrible for making the same choice I made? Inner friend. I'm a loving pet parent who made a heartbreaking decision because I couldn't bear to see him suffer. Inner critic. I should have done more research. I should have gotten a third opinion. Friend test. Would I blame a friend for not being perfect under extreme stress? Inner friend. I gathered the information I could and made the best decision possible given the circumstances and time pressure. Inner critic. I was selfish. I couldn't handle watching them deteriorate. Friend test. Would I call a friend selfish for choosing compassion over prolonging suffering? Inner friend. I was brave enough to prioritize prioritize their comfort over my need to keep them with me. The friend test works because it helps you access the compassion you already have. You know how to be kind to others. Now we're just applying that same kindness to yourself. Reframing your story with self-compassion. Now I want to help you rewrite your story using the language of self-compassion, the harsh version. Most of us have a harsh version of our pet loss story. It sounds something like, I failed them. I made the wrong choice. I was weak when they needed me to be strong. The compassionate version. But there's another version of your story, a true version that honors both your love and your courage. This version might sound like, I loved them so deeply that I was willing to break my own heart to spare theirs. When faced with an impossible choice, I chose their peace over my comfort. I was strong enough to let go when holding on would have meant more suffering for them. The reframing process. Step 1. Identify the harsh story. Write down the harsh story you've been telling yourself. What do you say about your role in your pet's death? Step 2. Apply the friend test. Would you say these things to someone you love? Step 3. Rewrite with compassion. Rewrite the story using compassionate language. Focus on your love, your courage, and the impossible circumstances you faced. Step 4. Practice the new story. Read it to yourself daily. Let your heart begin to believe what your mind knows is true. Example of reframing. Harsh story. I killed my cat. I gave up on her. I chose death because I was too weak to watch her fight. Compassionate story. I loved Mitten so much that when she was suffering with kidney disease, I chose to give her peace. The vet explained she was in pain and wouldn't recover. Instead of keeping her alive for my own needs, I made the hardest decision of my life because I couldn't bear to see her uncomfortable. I held her while she went to sleep surrounded by love. I was brave when she needed me to be. Do you feel the difference? Both stories acknowledge the same facts, but one destroys your heart while the other honors it. Creating your letter to my brave heart. Now comes the most important part of today's lesson. You're going to write a letter to yourself, specifically to the part of you that made that difficult decision. This isn't just any letter. This is a letter from your wisest, most compassionate self to the part of you that's been carrying guilt and shame. How to structure your letter. Start with recognition. Dear brave heart, I see how much you loved Pet's name. Acknowledge the difficulty. I know this was the hardest decision you've ever had to make. Validate your courage. You were brave when it mattered most. You put their needs before your own. Offer forgiveness. You don't need to carry this guilt anymore. You acted from love. Express gratitude. Thank you for loving them so deeply. Thank you for having the courage to let them go. End with permission. You have my permission to remember them with joy instead of regret. Example, letter to my brave heart, part 1. Dear brave heart, I see how much you loved Buddy. For 12 years, you were his everything, his protector, his provider, his safe place in the world. I know that choosing euthanasia was the hardest decision you've ever had to make. Your hands were shaking, your heart was breaking, but you looked into his tired eyes and chose his peace over your comfort. You were brave when it mattered most. You listened to the vet. You held him close. You whispered how much you loved him as he fell asleep. You don't need to carry this guilt anymore. You acted from love, not selfishness. You freed him from pain, not gave up on him. Example, letter to my brave heart. Part 2. Thank you for loving him so completely. Thank you for having the courage to let him go when holding on would have meant more suffering. You have my permission to remember him with joy instead of regret. You have my permission to heal, with love and respect for your brave heart, your name. This letter becomes a tool you can return to whenever the harsh voice starts speaking. It's your own voice of compassion, ready to remind you of the truth. Summary. Why we criticize ourselves. We become our own worst critic because we think self-punishment prevents future mistakes, because we believe suffering proves love, and because guilt gives us an illusion of control. Inner critic versus inner friend. We learn to identify inner critic language versus inner friend language, and we practice the friend test to translate harsh thoughts into compassionate ones. Reframing your story. We reframed your pet loss story using the language of self-compassion, focusing on love and courage instead of blame and failure. Letter to my brave heart. And we created your letter to my brave heart, a personalized tool for ongoing self-forgiveness. Remember, self-compassion isn't letting yourself off the hook. It's acknowledging that you're human, that you love deeply, and that you deserve the same kindness you'd give to others. Clear action. Step. Your action step for today is to write your complete letter to my brave heart. Take your time. Make it personal. Include specific details about your pet and your situation. Then read it out loud to yourself. Let your voice speak these words of compassion over your wounded heart. And here's the ongoing practice. Every time you catch your inner critic speaking, pause and ask, what would my inner friend say right now? Then consciously choose the compassionate voice. Looking ahead. This week, we've worked on breaking the guilt spiral through understanding euthanasia as courage, stopping what-if thoughts, and practicing self-forgiveness. You've been building a foundation of emotional freedom that will support everything we do going forward. Next week, we begin the beautiful work of crafting your sacred goodbye ceremony. We'll learn how to create rituals that honor your pet's memory and bring your heart peace. For now, be gentle with yourself. Speak to your heart with the same love your pet always saw in you, because that's exactly what they would want, for you to treat yourself with the kindness you always showed them.